Right, okay, we're going to get to the main meat of the news, and
I'm going to open it.
no, 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 save it, save it, save it.
For what? We're
We're
going
saving
to.
it for the other episode.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
This is the Ric Flair woo, drink.
Stop giving him free plugs. He's never paid us. It's it's hard not to give him a free plug in a sense, but anyway, that's for
Hey,
Tuesday.
that is actually a pretty good picture of Rick.
Actually, I do like the design of it. I do like the picture,
Yeah,
frankly.
it is pretty good and nice color.
Well, speaking of people who've had accusations leveled at them, we're going to get into Vince McMahon now. Vince has been.
I love. I told you before we went on the air. This is every broadcast network or station carried the Vince news. He is first of all, he's the greatest heel I've ever seen. And I think a lot of fans will agree with me. You want to slap him. You want to, and I've seen him do, they were just, but was that Vince playing a character or was that Vince? But we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, there's a few developments or things that have been established over this past week since we last recorded. One, Vince McMahon had drafted the non-disclosure agreements without WWE's knowledge or approval, which
I think that's a no.
yeah, I think if things are happening with WWE employees or independent contractors, whichever, and you're sort of not cluing in the company about what you're doing in that sense, I suspect
Yeah,
that's
but the
probably a no-no.
company was paying it.
Yes, that was another thing that the company's. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't pay it, or he wouldn't have to tell anybody.
Mm.
So he let WWE pay it, and still didn't tell anybody. That's where, even though he owned the company, they had shareholders, they had stockholders, and he didn't let anybody know. That is, what's that called? I'm sure it's illegal.
Embezzlement,
Probably fraud.
misappropriation, fraud. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
The next thing is that Jerry McDevitt, the famed Jerry McDevitt, we've talked about him on the show before, was involved in drafting the NDAs apparently, and then suspiciously retired at the end of last year. I mean, I say suspiciously, he's 75. He's done with it anyway. But it's funny how he announced his retirement earlier, but then he said he was going to work up until the end of 2023. So he's
What's
just
that
about
old
started.
saying? The rats desert a sinking ship.
Yep.
See, they knew more than the rest of us knew. And
We
he wasn't the only one, I think, that saw this coming. Mr. Kevin Dunn saw it coming too. And all of a sudden he retires and got his severance and he took off. But we'll talk about this a little bit. But I think we're going to see a little more of Mr. Dunn.
Ooh, that's interesting. Well,
And
actually,
and I think we're going to see a little more of Jerry McDevitt. And I got a hell of a story about him too.
oh, we've
I won't tell.
it,
I won't tell. We already told the story.
yeah, the Puerto Rico story with Tiger Ellie Singh.
Yes,
We've
but
told that one. We told it very
it's a
recently, in fact.
a great story. And I never met him but one time on the phone, and we didn't get along. I mean, it was very hostile.
Search for that Tiger Ellie Singh. It'll be a clip on the YouTube channel. Now, the federal raid on Vince McMahon's house. It has now been established, apparently, that the federal raid included grabbing Vince McMahon's phone. So that is how all these text messages in the Janelle Grant lawsuits have been verified.
But they don't need to grab the phone, do they?
I think it certainly helps.
Yeah. I mean, aren't the texts saved for eternity on the home server?
Well, things can go wrong in life in that kind of thing. I think with the stone cold evidence that they've got the text off his phone, they can corroborate the times, they can corroborate any other metadata along with those. I think that's a slam dunk case that the text absolutely came from Vince's phone. Just for people, because a
Listen,
lot of people
I
are
was
asking
having
about
I
that.
was having a crappy day yesterday. You ever have those days you don't have any energy much, and I was having a crappy day, but I thought one thing that cheered me up. I'm not Vince McMahon today. And I thought, woo, woo. All right, go ahead. That's neither here nor there. I just thought I'd bring that up.
Next up, Ari Emanuel and Mark Shapiro, the two biggest swinging schlongs of TKO, ordered pretty much.
What did you call them? Schlongs?
The swinging schlongs. Apparently that's what Paul Heyman used to call himself in ECW, the swinging schlong of ECW. I thought I'd throw that in there. Ari Emanuel and Mark Shapiro basically told Vince to quit, to step down. So, by the time the Royal Rumble began, this is a quote, but I've not actually said where I'm quoting it from. McMahon was gone from TKO seemingly for good as TKO sought to distance itself from McMahon's alleged past transgressions. These concerns culminated the evening of January 26th when Emanuel and TKO President COO Mark Shapiro called McMahon and told him it would be in the best interest of the company for him to resign. He agreed and submitted his resignation. Now, sources say that TKO executives reached out to all of the company's rights partners after the news broke, well aware of the need to keep them in the loop on what was happening. So it's funny how the Slim Jim pulling out the Royal Rumble could have put an end to 100 years of McMahon's in wrestling, in that sense.
Well, I have a theory about all this anyway.
Okay.
Would you care to hear it?
I do.
It's kind of short. I think, I mean, this is typical, normal, I don't know how normal it is, behavior for Vince, because it's always followed him. Even when I was there, it was common knowledge that Vince was like that. And since when I would get around him, I would feel these uneasy vibes off of him, and the Laurinaitis too. So this didn't surprise me. But I think when TKO or Endeavor took over the company, the plan was never to have Vince around. I don't think they wanted him around. So when they took over, he was there and they were getting along with him. They were kissing his butt. Let's just get through it. And why did he leave the first time?
Oh, because of the anonymous email detailing all these non-disclosure agreements and, the embezzlement.
Okay. But they knew that, I think, before they even bought the company, because they wrote that he is a liability in their first.
Well, everybody knew that, because this was in the middle of 2022, and then TKO got involved in the company about April of 23 or something like that. So there was nearly a year between. So Vince McMahon was definitely a liability before they got involved.
Well, and they put that down. So when they got him to leave the first time, they said, "Well, okay, fine. We'll let sleeping dogs lie." But when did all the accusations come out?
That we covered 2 weeks ago, less maybe. But
and
I know exactly when it was. It was on a Thursday, because all the really, really good news comes out on a Thursday just after we've finished recording.
Oh yeah, that's
so yeah.
That's normal behavior for the show.
Yeah.
But anyway, when Vince left, they were all happy. Okay, we can go ahead and run it the way we want to now, exactly the way we planned. But he forced his way back in, because he had 75 or 80% of the voting shares, which means that if he didn't like something they wanted to do, he could just vote it down. Nothing they could do about it. Now, all of a sudden, who owns the company? Vince? They just had bought the company.
No. So it's not a purchase of the company. It was an amalgamation of UFC, Endeavor, and WWE. So there's no actual purchasing or money changing hands.
But they had control of it.
Yeah, Vince had 18% of stock. He sold,
but still, he had the voting shares, which could stop them from doing a lot of stuff.
Not in TKO, no. I think the voting shares just became regular shares like everybody else's. WWE stock was transferred to TKO stock, so he still couldn't vote anyone else when it became TKO. That would have fallen to Ari Emanuel, Mark Shapiro, and.
But then how did he force his way back in then?
Oh, this is before the TKO merger. So This was in January around that 2023. And at the time, he did have the voting shares majority with WWE, and that's how he got back in. But when TKO turned up and they merged, then Vince no longer had majority voting power.
Well, it still doesn't change the story because they had planned for Vince not to be there.
Okay.
So when he forced his way back in, now they got a problem. And my belief is the story from the girl, from the lady, Janelle Grant, I think was leaked to the Post via somebody, and I'm thinking Nick Khan maybe. I think it was leaked from inside Titan Towers to the Post. Now that's how it makes mainstream news. And now Vince is he is hung with whatever that all that publicity, and it's hard for him to fight that. But I don't think that TKO or Endeavor ever intended for Vince to be a part of the company when they took control of it. And they wanted to get rid of him, and they did.
I'm glad you mentioned a conspiracy, because we're actually going to get to a conspiracy later on when it comes to The Rock, and it may involve Nick Khan as well. But for now, we're going to...
Oh, really? I haven't heard that.
Oh, it's a good one as well. It's a good one. I will ask a couple more things about Vince, then we're going to get on to John Laurinaitis, which is the most astonishing maybe news of the week. But someone wrote in and said, "Do you think?"
No, I shouldn't laugh about this, but
do you think WWE should cancel the Hall of Fame this year because there's just far too much negative publicity around the company, or do you think just carry on?
No, keep moving, because Vince is not. I mean, if you cancel the Hall of Fame, it's a standard event for them every year. Go ahead and do it. Yeah, I wouldn't cancel it. Okay. It's business as usual, even though it's not business as usual. And everybody knows you're putting a front on, so you're not fooling anybody. But you would really bring a lot of more attention to it if you canceled it.
Next.
Are you sure I can't open this?
No. Save it for later. You don't need the energy. You don't need the mushroom infused whatever. So Rebecca from San Antonio, Texas actually wrote in as well. I know we don't normally do the questions on this episode, but questions for Dutch@gmail.com, by the way. Dear Dutch, with all that's been happening with Vince and his lawsuit, will this help AEW get over the hump over WWE's popularity? Also, do you think this will prompt the old territories to start up again? I doubt that, but do you think AEW is going to benefit from this in the long run? Because, to be honest, I've heard no one talk about AEW at all recently because of this.
How can AEW benefit when all the talk's about WWE? I mean, and until their product gets better, no, they're going to be in the same boat they're in right now. They're just lagging along. It's like, I don't know, when you watch their show, and this is not a knock on anybody in AEW, but to me, and we're gonna see a little clip a little later on, that even though it's 20 years old and it involves Vince, it's still a good one. But the AEW stuff is like, it's just boring. The announcers are boring. I don't know. They need a lot of work. They need a lot of help.